Coming up in this incredible Part 2 episode with James Talarico.
If you can't afford gas, if you can't afford insurance, if you can't afford childcare, if you can't afford housing, none of that is going to get better until we fix this corrupt political system. Unless you're one of the people in the top 1%, like, you're getting screwed. And so let's come together and take power back for ourselves and our communities.
How would you assess the job President Trump is doing right now? You are a Democrat. How would you assess the job President Joe Biden did in office? James Talarico is arguably the hottest rising star in U.S. politics right now.
Do you need to run for president? We need someone who's actually a good person.
James Talarico out of Texas.
Oh, that guy's good, right?
He's terrific. Really talented.
A new poll has James Talarico leading.
A little bit of hope is a dangerous thing.
The 8th-generation Texan, former middle school teacher and Presbyterian seminarian, is a 4-term Texas state rep, described by many as a workhorse, not a show horse, after passing several bills in his state by bringing together both Democrats and Republicans alike. His current U.S. Senate campaign has catapulted him into the national spotlight and sparked national debate and outrage over his fight against Christian nationalism, his vow to end corruption in politics, and exactly why his national media appearances seem to be causing so much commotion.
I have a lot of family members and friends who voted for President Trump in the last election, and I don't blame them for having that hope. I think they've seen in just 1 year, though, that all those promises have been broken. People voted for Donald Trump to end these forever wars, and he's, again, done the exact opposite. So it's just broken promise after broken promise.
Well, Donald Trump has had a lot to say about you, which we'll get to in a minute.
You would think he'd have more important things to focus on.
What are your views on the Iran war?
We are spending $1 billion a day on this new war. That's money that we could be investing in our schools, investing in our healthcare, lowering the price of housing and childcare and prescription drugs. And we've already lost brave men and women in uniform. And I worry that we're going to lose more.
I know a lot of Texans who love their guns.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on gun control?
Well, I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. I don't pick and choose between the Bill of Rights. The same reason I value the freedom of speech and the freedom of worship. It's the same reason I value the right to bear arms, because you have a fundamental right to protect yourself and to protect your family. My greatest concern about AI is that we're not making these decisions together.
Some people are predicting the end of humanity as we know it. Is unifying the global community on regulation with AI something that's even possible?
Absolutely, it's possible.
James Talarico.
Let's talk about your appearance on the Stephen Colbert Show that made national headlines everywhere when it was pulled from airing on television, some say due to unfair censorship in the media. What exactly happened, and what do you think of all of it now that you're looking at it? Because that was a whole thing. It keeps on going.
Well, a threat to any of our First Amendment rights is a threat to all of our First Amendment rights, whether you're a conservative or a progressive, a Democrat or a Republican or a Libertarian or a socialist. We all depend on the ability to speak, the ability to assemble. And when those freedoms are threatened, especially when they're threatened by the government, we all have to loudly speak out against it.
Today, if you're ready to leave feeling inspired, if you're ready to ignite hope inside of you for the future of our country, even if it's for the first time or for the first time in a long time, this conversation is for you. I am so grateful for your love and loyalty to this show. And there's something I want to quickly share personally with you, from me to you. I have had Republicans, Democrats and independents on the show, ranging from Michelle Obama in a special 3-part interview to actor Kelsey Grammer sharing his support of President Trump. The intention of the show is to be a force for good and a force for love. I have guests on that might vote differently, love differently, or pray differently from you and me, because I believe to heal humanity through love, we must first understand the humans who make it up. I am so happy you are here, and no matter how you vote, you love or you pray, you belong here. And I have to say, I'm excited to share today's conversation with you. In fact, it is easily one of my favorite conversations in the history of the show. And really quick, if you could take 2 seconds and hit the subscribe button on the app you're listening or watching on, that way you'll be the very first to get inspirational episodes. Plus, you can get weekly inspiration into your inbox from me for free. Just join my newsletter at jamiekernlima.com. And thank you so much for sharing this episode with every single person that you might know who needs inspiration or hope today, because we are all in this life together.
Welcome to the Jamie Kern Lima Show.
Oprah, how have you defied the odds?
Her show is unlike any I've ever done.
A revelation. When you listen, it feels like a hug.
First Lady Michelle Obama.
Jamie, you are going so deep. I have never had this in-depth conversation.
I've actually never said that out loud to anybody in an interview before. You know how to get there.
Your brain and your spirit and your heart is like, wow.
Melinda French Gates.
When I look into Jamie's eyes, I feel like I am on some other cosmic level with her.
Meghan, Duchess of Sussex.
I wasn't expecting that one.
I could see the light around her. She's infused with light.
Maria Shriver.
I never made that mistake again.
Imagine overcoming self-doubt, learning to believe in yourself and trust yourself and know you are enough. Welcome to the Jamie Kern Lima Show.
Jamie Kern Lima is her name.
Everybody needs Jamie Kern Lima in their life.
Jamie Kern Lima. Jamie, you're so inspiring.
Jamie Kern Lima.
Joe Rogan and many others are already calling for you to run for president. I know you're focused on the U.S. Senate right now, but yes. I have to ask you the question, will you one day run for president?
I think it's so crazy that people have asked me this question, just because I think in Texas there is such a focus on the task at hand, which is ending 30 years of one-party rule in our state. Like, it is so all of us in Texas are living with the extremism and the corruption in our government. We have schools that are closing in my district, in communities across the state. We have people who can't access basic health care, women who can't access basic reproductive health care. And so I think people in our state are so singularly focused on this task at hand that any effort to take our eyes off the prize is going to get shot down pretty quickly, including by this Texan, just because we know what's at stake here. And everything else is a distraction. Winning political power in Texas in November of this year is the only task at hand. It's the only thing that matters in our state, because people are suffering right now across Texas because we don't have a check on that one-party rule. And all of that could change this year if we play our cards right. So I don't mean to dodge your question, but I think in Texas there is such a sense that anything that distracts from this current race, this current moment in our state, is something not worthy of our attention and time.
When you win in November, what are the first 3 things you're going to do in Texas?
Oh my gosh! So the first priority, I think, needs to be comprehensive political reform. And I know that sounds wonky. It sounds like inside baseball. It sounds like process. But if you can't afford groceries, if you can't afford gas, if you can't afford insurance, if you can't afford childcare, if you can't afford housing, none of that is going to get better until we fix this corrupt political system, until we get the money out of our politics and rebuild a government of, by, and for the people. We have to do that first before we make progress on costs, on jobs, on healthcare, on education, all the issues that I work so hard on in the legislature. We've got to fix the system itself. So let me just name 3 things that I would put in that comprehensive political reform package. One is banning super PACs and corporate PACs, because I think Citizens United was probably the most disastrous decision from the Supreme Court in recent decades, and that's saying something because there's been some really horrific decisions that have come down from this court. But I think Citizens United is probably the worst. I think banning corporate PACs and super PACs is probably the single best thing we could do to mitigate the impacts of Citizens United. So that'd be 1. 2, it would be banning members of Congress from trading stocks and enriching themselves while they're in public office. Public service should be a service. It should not be a career. It should not be a way that you become rich and wealthy. And I think we have to have policies in place that ensure that's the case. And then last, I would say it is banning political gerrymandering. I led the quorum break last summer to shine a national spotlight on this redistricting power grab that we've seen go from state to state across this country. And I think we have to pass a national ban to end gerrymandering once and for all in every state in the union, red states and blue states alike, because that's the only way that you're going to get representatives who are actually competing for every vote in their districts. Because right now you've got solidly red districts, solidly blue districts. The only threat to people's reelection is their far right flank or their far left flank in a primary. And if we want people to focus on the broad middle, then I think we have to have districts that are truly competitive in a general election. And banning gerrymandering is the only way to do that. So get big money out of politics, banning corporate PACs, super PACs, stopping members of Congress from enriching themselves off of their public service, and then banning gerrymandering so we have free and fair elections in every community across the country. Those are just 3. I have a lot more, but if we could fix this broken, corrupt political system, I really think it'll allow us to make progress on all the other issues we care about. Bringing down the cost of housing, bringing down the cost of groceries, bringing down the cost of gas and insurance and utilities and childcare, restructuring the economy so that people can live the American dream and can thrive and the next generation can do better than ours. All of that starts with transforming this political system first.
You are a Democrat. How would you assess the job President Joe Biden did in office?
Mixed. There were certainly accomplishments in the Biden administration that I think should be celebrated. The bipartisan infrastructure law, the investments in renewable energy, which is a boon for Texas. We're number 1 in wind and solar, and they're growing industries in our state that we want to support and foster. But then I think there were some pretty disastrous failures. I think the one that comes to mind for us in Texas is the failure on the border. Joe Biden completely failed us when it came to border security. There was utter chaos in border communities in our state. I remember talking to my colleagues in the state house who represent border communities, and they just told me about the complete breakdown in our immigration system. And so I think that was a pretty clear and obvious failure on behalf of the president and his administration. I would say the results are mixed. There were successes to be proud of for sure, and there were some failures that have had some pretty disastrous consequences.
How would you assess the job President Trump is doing right now?
I have a lot of family members and friends who voted for President Trump in the last election. Many of them were concerned about January 6th. Many of them really dislike his style of politics, his bullying, his disrespect for people. But they voted for him for one reason. They thought he could lower costs. They thought that he would bring back the economy of 2017, 2018, 2019, which was a pretty good economy. And I don't blame them for having that hope. I think they've seen in just 1 year, though, that those were all those promises have been broken. Everything is now more expensive. Working families are falling further behind. The swamp that he promised to drain is bigger than it's ever been before, and corruption is occurring at unimaginable levels now. And it's what I hear from a lot of the president's supporters or former supporters in Texas. They put their hope in him that he would get corruption out of Washington and lower people's costs. He's done the exact opposite on both counts. And so there's a lot of disillusionment, and people are feeling let down, feeling betrayed. And I think it's our job in this moment to welcome those people into our coalition, to let them know that they can sit at our table, and that together, if we truly come together and we love our neighbors in this campaign, I think we can elect a senator who's going to actually fight for us, and who will actually be able to deliver on some of the promises that have been broken over the last 12 months.
You've talked about how if you voted for Trump, but now you're super disappointed, or even had voted for Cornyn or anyone else in your state, that there's a place for everyone.
Absolutely.
On your team, on your campaign.
Absolutely.
In your group.
That's right. Because we all have shared problems and shared dreams. I mean, I went out to East Texas, Longview, Texas, and we had a packed house. We had to move venues a few times because we had so much interest out in deep red Longview. And I remember I asked the audience, I said, instead of are you on the blue team or the red team, I asked, do you have a parent or grandparent who needs care? Mm. And you heard people agreeing. Mm-hmm. I said, do you have a child or a grandchild who needs some kind of childcare, early childhood education, and can't get it? And there were nods of agreement. I asked how many people here struggle with the burden of medical debt or credit card debt or student debt, and you saw just heads nodding all over the room. And I told the people there in Longview that I also know those things. I have also struggled with those same burdens. And so we're on the same team. You're on my team and I'm on your team. And the people at the very top who own the algorithms, who own the cable news networks, who own the politicians fighting on our screens, they want to divide this team. They want to pit us against each other. They want us to be focused on how we're all different instead of on how we're all the same. Because whether you're black, white, brown, whether you're a Christian, Jew, a Muslim, an atheist, whether you're urban, suburban, rural, blue team, red team, I don't care. Like, you can't afford anything. You can't get ahead, no matter how hard you work. And like, that's the real fight. That's the real struggle. So like, let's try to put aside some of these other differences, which are important. I don't mean to minimize those disagreements or those differences, but let's all recognize the big thing we have in common, which is that this economy is rigged against all of us. Unless you're one of the people in the top 1%, like, you're getting screwed. And so let's come together and take power back for ourselves and our communities. And I think that's resonating with people.
What are your views on the Iran war?
Well, as a millennial, I saw how military disasters like the Iraq War robbed this nation of young lives, of billions of dollars, and of our moral standing in the world. And I really worry that the current administration is repeating those same mistakes, getting us involved in yet another forever war in the Middle East without much justification, without much explanation. And we've already lost brave men and women in uniform. And I worry that we're going to lose more. And we are spending $1 billion a day on this new war. That's money that we could be investing in our schools, investing in our healthcare, lowering the price of housing and childcare and prescription drugs. Like, that's $1 billion a day that's not being spent on our communities. Every dollar we spend bombing someone on the other side of the world is a dollar we're not investing here at home. During the primary campaign, I visited Sand Branch, Texas, which is a community south of Dallas. It's a community that doesn't have any running water, doesn't have basic sewer infrastructure. And so every dollar we're spending on another forever war in the Middle East is a dollar we're not spending in Sand Branch, Texas, to give our neighbors running water. There's always enough money for bombs. There's always enough money for war. And there's never enough money for our healthcare, our schools, our veterans, our communities. And I think people are sick of it. People voted for Donald Trump to end these forever wars. And he's, again, done the exact opposite. So it's just broken promise after broken promise. And we have to meet people where they're at in their disillusionment and hopefully reinstill a little bit of hope in people that we can have a politics that truly serves our interests. And I think that's the work we're doing in Texas.
Well, Donald Trump has had a lot to say about you, which we'll get to in a minute.
You would think he'd have more important things to focus on. But
I want to talk about, I want to stick on the topic kind of war, but more as it pertains to AI. Some see AI taking over our lives and taking jobs as one of the greatest imminent wars. What are your views on AI with AI, AGI, superintelligence, and beyond? And what do you believe the prognosis is for all of us having a job?
Yeah. This is one of the questions I get asked the most on the campaign trail, no matter where I go in Texas. There's understandably, a lot of anxiety and fear around these technologies. At the same time, I think a lot of people are seeing benefits in their lives, in their jobs, to some of these new technologies. And so we're going to have to hold both of these things together at the same time. I talked earlier about false choices in our politics and in our policymaking. A lot of people want to know, do you think AI is going to be utopia or dystopia? The answer is probably going to be something in between. It's probably going to be a mix of both of those things, and it's going to depend on the decisions that we make together. My greatest concern about AI is that we're not making these decisions together. If you think about the great innovations of the 20th century, the Manhattan Project and the space race, those were done by the public sector in partnership with the private sector. That's not the case here with this innovation, which arguably is more consequential than the previous two that I mentioned. And this is being done by a handful of billionaires for their own profit. And that should scare all of us. The fact that there is no regulatory framework from our elected leaders on how to ensure that AI is not replacing our jobs, is not harming our children, is not subverting our democracy, should be deeply concerning to all of us. Whether you're excited about AI or you're really concerned about it, all of us should be in agreement that we need some basic rules of the road. And I would prioritize those three things: protecting our jobs and the economy, protecting our children, and protecting our democracy. And I think we need some common sense regulations to do those things while not inhibiting useful innovation.
Some people are predicting the end of humanity as we know it. Some are predicting literal human extinction. Is unifying the global community on regulation with AI something that's even possible?
Absolutely, it's possible. All it requires is the political will. And I think that's what we're building in Texas and across the country, not just with our campaign, but with grassroots movements that are popping up everywhere, pushing back against unregulated AI. Because again, I think these technologies have a lot of promise if they are developed in the right way with the right guardrails. And that should be an international endeavor and could be a really crucial opportunity to have some of these conversations with our allies and with our adversaries about how to ensure that we're all protected from the worst effects of this technology. I think the concern right now is that our leaders aren't starting any of those conversations. It's right now what we're seeing is a head in the sand strategy from our nation's leaders in both parties. And that's terrifying for people because no matter where AI goes, we need to be having this conversation out in public, in the open, with our elected officials who are charged with the sacred duty to make these kinds of decisions. And so I want to lead on this issue. as a U.S. Senator. I don't want our country to stick its head in the sand. I want us to be forward-looking. I want us to be ambitious. And I want us to figure out how we make these technologies work for us instead of against us.
What are your views on what's happening in the justice system in our country that many say is no longer ruled by precedent or actual just law? Many people are saying that they're actually fearing what's happening in our courts more than AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to have a serious conversation about reforms to the Supreme Court because we've seen how corruption can infect the judicial branch just as easily as the executive and legislative branches. And so I'm very open to a conversation about reforms needed for the Supreme Court. I think passing term limits could provide more balance on the court, could help lower the temperature every time there's a vacancy. I think a binding code of conduct for our justices is absolutely necessary. And I'm very open to other ideas about how to reform the judicial branch more broadly, but I think it's a very valid concern people have. In the state legislature, I led on justice reform issues, particularly when it came to youth, young people who are incarcerated, because they are the most vulnerable members of our community, our most vulnerable neighbors. And in fact, one bill that I was able to pass on a bipartisan basis was a bill to allow incarcerated minors in Texas to graduate with a high school diploma. And I remember I got that bill passed through the legislature, got it signed by the governor, and then I was invited out to Ferguson Prison in East Texas to give the first ever commencement address to the first graduates under my bill. And I watched as the first kid, his name was Lonnie, he was the first kid to graduate under my legislation, and he wasn't wearing his orange jumpsuit. He was wearing a cap and gown. And I just saw how a new horizon had opened up for him and that a new world, a new future was completely possible because of a bill that I was able to pass through state government. And so there's lots of ugly parts of politics. There's hard parts about campaigning statewide in Texas. But I've seen how when people come together, you can truly change people's lives. You can truly transform these broken systems. You can truly love your neighbor through public policy. And those are the moments that keep me going, even through all the ugly and nasty parts of this.
I don't know if I've been forwarded a video more than the number of times people forwarded me your video that went viral everywhere about fighting against the 10 Commandments poster being mandated in Texas classrooms. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier about theocracy and the dangers of theocracy, and we're seeing that in this Texas. We're seeing that in the Texas state capitol. We are seeing lawmakers pushing bills that erode the sacred boundary between church and state, that separation that's in our First Amendment, in the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. And this bill that they were pushing would force every teacher in Texas, in every public school, not private schools, but public schools, force every teacher to put up a poster of the 10 Commandments. And as a Christian, as a person of faith, the 10 Commandments are very important to me. I've tried to live my life based on those 10 Commandments. It's hard enough to be different as a kid. It's hard to be a Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, atheist kid in a Texas public school where Christianity is the dominant religion, the dominant culture. And so the fact that we have powerful politicians who are forcing now their teachers to preach a certain kind of religion from the front of the classroom or from the walls of the classroom, to me is not only unconstitutional, not only un-American, but I think also deeply un-Christian. And it's why I fought so hard against that bill. I also just think, is Christianity really at a point where we have to force people to put up a poster to prove our faith's legitimacy? To me, that's the sign of a dead religion. And my religion is not dead. I know it's not dead for you either. But I think when you have politicians who feel like they've got to force people to put up a poster in their classroom for the sake of that religion, that's a real troubling sign in our faith, in our church. And it's something I think Christians have to push back against loudly, because it is a perversion of our faith and it's a subversion of our democracy.
Let's talk about your appearance on the Stephen Colbert Show that made national headlines everywhere when it was pulled from airing on television, some say due to unfair censorship in the media. What exactly happened, and what do you think of all of it now that you're looking at it? Because that was a whole thing that keeps on going.
Well, I've been a fan of Stephen Colbert since I was in high school when the Colbert Report was on. And so when we got invited to go on The Late Show, it was just like, I can't believe I'm going to meet Stephen Colbert, right? This is so cool. And then I think it was a few weeks later, they told our team that because of the FCC, because of their investigation into The View, after I went on that program, that their lawyers advised them not to air the interview with me. And so they said, well, we could still do it on YouTube and, we'll put it online. And, it was obviously a disappointment because being on the YouTube Late Show is not the same as being on the TV Late Show. And so I remember we did the show and I got to meet Stephen and it was great. But, I went to bed a little disappointed that we weren't going to be on the Late Show and that the most powerful politicians in the country were able to censor one of the major news networks. And then the next morning I woke up and it was everywhere. And suddenly you saw Americans across the political spectrum, across the country, speaking out against this kind of government censorship, speaking out in defense of the freedom of speech. And that, I was not anticipating that would happen, but I'm really glad it did, because we need that bipartisan commitment to our most fundamental freedoms. A threat to any of our First Amendment rights is a threat to all of our First Amendment rights, whether you're a conservative or a progressive, a Democrat or a Republican or a libertarian or a socialist. We all depend on the ability to speak, the ability to assemble. And when those freedoms are threatened, especially when they're threatened by the government, we all have to loudly speak out against it.
Speaking of amendments, I know a lot of Texans who love their guns. Where do you stand on gun control?
Well, I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. I don't pick and choose between the Bill of Rights. The same reason I value the freedom of speech and the freedom of worship, it's the same reason I value the right to bear arms, because you have a fundamental right to protect yourself and to protect your family. In Texas, there's a proud tradition of passing along guns from one generation to the other, whether it's for self-defense, whether it's for sport, whether it's for hunting. It is a part of our culture and our heritage, and I value that. Like many Texans, like many gun owners, I also believe in gun safety. In fact, when I was taught how to shoot by my granddad in Harper, Texas, on his property, and safety was the thing that he drilled into me. And I think any young Texan who is learning how to handle a firearm for the first time, safety is the thing that they're taught. And so all I want is our public policies to reflect that value of safety. And that means universal background checks to ensure that guns aren't falling into the hands of terrorists or dangerous people. It's ensuring that we have safe storage laws so that guns are safely secured within the home. It's ensuring that we have that we're coming together to close loopholes like the gun show loophole, where anybody can walk into one of these gun shows and walk out with a powerful weapon. I want to ensure that we are honoring the Second Amendment, which is a sacred God-given right, and protecting people's safety. And we can and must do both of those things at the same time.
I'm imagining your granddad teaching you as a little kid gun safety, which is probably a great thing given what you shared about being rebellious, little kid and a fighter.
Correct.
And
That's right.
Fighter.
That's right. Yes. Especially with that kid, make sure.
Especially with that kid. I want to talk about your stance on abortion.
Yeah.
As a Presbyterian seminarian.
Yeah.
how have you arrived? Well, first of all, what are your views?
Yeah.
Clearly, and how have you arrived at them from a biblical perspective?
Yeah.
This conversation with James Talarico is so incredible, we made it into multiple parts. From where James stands on issues you care about most to answering all your questions that you wrote in to ask him, he is truly opening up like never before. And one thing I can promise you, you'll leave part 3 feeling a renewed sense of hope and inspiration. You are not going to want to miss this incredible part 3 of our conversation with James Talarico, coming up in the next episode of the Jamie Kern Lima Show. Remember, this episode's not just for you and me. Please share this with every single person that you know because it can impact and change their life too. And if you love today's episode, please click the follow or subscribe button for the show on the app that you're listening to it on or watching it on. And if it added value to your life, if you could please give it a rating or review, I love a great 5-star. We'd be so, so grateful. And just share it with everyone you believe in. Maybe it's another person in your life who could benefit from it. Maybe someone you know is, going through a tough time and needs some hope, needs some inspiration, or just needs to feel less alone and more enough. Please share it with others online in your community who just might need the words and tools and lessons in this episode today. You never know whose life you're meant to change today by sharing this episode. And thank you so much for joining me. Before you go, I want to share some words with you that couldn't be more true. You, right now, exactly as you are enough and fully worthy. You're worthy of your greatest hopes, of your wildest dreams, and of all the unconditional love in the world. And it's an honor to welcome you to each and every episode of the Jamie Kern Lima Show. Here, I hope you'll come as you are. Heal where you need, blossom what you choose. Journey toward your calling and stay as long as you'd like because you belong here. You are worthy. You are loved. You are love. And I love you. And I cannot wait to join you on the next episode of the Jamie Kern Lima Show. In life, you don't soar to the level of your hopes and dreams. You stay stuck at the level of your self-worth. When you build your self-worth, you change your entire life. And that's exactly why I wrote my new book, Worthy: How to Believe You Are Enough and Transform Your Life for You. If you have some self-doubt to destroy and a destiny to fulfill, Worthy is for you. In Worthy, you'll learn proven tools and simple steps that bring life-changing results, like how to get unstuck from the things holding you back, build unshakable self-love, unlearn the lies that lead to self-doubt, and embrace the truths that wake up worthiness, overcome limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome, achieve your hopes and dreams by believing you are worthy of them, and so much more. Are you ready to unleash your greatness and step into the person you were born to be? Imagine a life with zero self-doubt and unshakable self-worth. Get your copy of Worthy, plus some amazing thank you bonus gifts for you at worthybook.com or the link in the show notes below. Imagine what you'd do if you fully believed in you. It's time to find out with Worthy. Who you spend time around is so important, as energy is contagious, and so is self-belief. And I'd love to hang out with you even more, especially if you could use an extra dose of inspiration, which is exactly why I've created my free weekly newsletter that's also a love letter to you, delivered straight to your inbox from me. If you haven't signed up to make sure that you get it each week, just go to jamiekernlima.com to make sure you're on the list, and you'll get your One-on-One with Jamie weekly newsletter and get ready to believe in you. If you're tired of hearing the bad news every single day and need some inspiration, some tips, tools, joy, and love hitting your inbox, I'm your girl. Subscribe at jamiekernlima.com or in the link in the show notes. And please note, I'm not a licensed therapist, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. If you love this incredible episode with James Talarico, I promise you're also going to love this life-changing episode of the Jamie Kern Lima Show coming up next right here just for you.